To be here today again in China, again after about a 4-year break. It's a great pleasure to be here, so thank you very much for the invitation. Yes, as Mike suggested, I'm going to talk a little bit about the policy environment and also about a new organisation that has been set up, the Sustainable Hardwood Coalition, which has been set up to prove the sustainability of hardwood. So to some extent, this is a response to the development of new regulations in international law, which is placing greater demands on producers of all wood products and other so-called forest risk commodities to demonstrate that wood is from deforestation-free supply chains. So what we're aiming to do with the Sustainable Hardwood Coalition is to develop an innovative framework to verify the sustainability of hardwood and to maximize market opportunities for sustainable hardwood products. Now, we're living actually in a very fast-moving, a very complex international forest policy arena at the moment, and actually it can be quite difficult to keep up with the rate of change. This fast-moving policy arena is creating quite a lot of opportunities for US hardwoods, and because of the focus on sustainability, of course, climate change, also inevitably the focus on the need for more supplies and readily available supplies of commodities as populations increase, as we've got increasing wealth and urbanization. Inevitably, there's an increase in consumption around the world, and the key issue really is to de-link the rise in consumption from rising pollution levels. And one of the huge benefits, of course, of using American hardwoods, like some other wood products, is that through use of wood, you can actually increase the consumption, and by doing so, reduce the level of pollution, particularly if you're using the wood to replace other materials. And that is the basis of the opportunity that exists for US hardwoods. But on there are also threats to products like American hardwoods through the regulatory environment. And one of the things, and the big thing, a part of what the Sustainable Hardwood Coalition will do, is to respond to these threats. And they come in the form of things like consumer misconceptions about the environmental credentials of hardwoods from natural forests, particularly when they're supplied from overseas. There's a lot of misconceptions about the environmental damage that these products can do. As we've seen in the case of US hardwoods, these are quite significant misconceptions. There's also a worry that this single-minded focus on carbon could lead to excessive restrictions on hardwood harvests and prioritizing, for example, production of biomass over the production of lumber and veneer products. Again, we're trying to provide a corrective to that particular problem. There's also, in many parts of the world, there's quite a strong preference in markets for certain forest certification brands, like FSC and PEFC, which have their merits, but unfortunately what they do not do is provide sufficient and fair market access for hardwoods that derive from smallholder operations. For example, in the US, even though we know the environmental credentials of American hardwood are extremely sound and that the forests are sustainably managed, only a very small proportion of American hardwoods are certified to any of the existing certification schemes. And then we have, as Mike mentioned, we have, for example, new regulations like the EU deforestation regulation, which is already in place. And in fact, it will be enforced from the end of next year. And this, while again it has certain merits, this law, it also includes a very challenging requirement. It will require, for placing wood on the market in the EU, for every single consignment placed on the market, it will require that the geolocation of the specific real estate property where the wood was harvested is provided with each consignment. And of course, when you're dealing with a product like American hardwoods, which is coming from a very fragmented supply chain with lots and lots of small owners, the only way you can add value to that product and to make sure that it's delivered in the sort of qualities that are required by the EU consumer is by mixing the material from lots and lots of different smallholders. So that could create quite a significant barrier to trade in American hardwood. In fact, in trade in any wood product which is derived from smallholders, there will be an enormous amount of mixing. And of course, anybody involved in the furniture trade knows, and furniture industries know, how much mixing of different types of wood products is required in order to produce an added value product. So another potential problem with the EUDR is it will actually discriminate against the export of any value-added products made out of wood into the EU market. This is quite a significant challenge. So we need new frameworks to start responding to this sort of challenge. And the other challenge that we're up against is that non-wood material sectors, they are less heavily regulated often than the timber sector, and they're often also more consolidated. They're better able to bring technical resources to bear on setting and meeting environmental standards. And often we find in the wood sector we're on the back foot in providing the sort of information and setting the standards that is required. We need to get on the front foot and start demanding changes that benefit our industry. So the Sustainable Hardwood Coalition, very specifically, what is its role? Well, first thing to say is it's supported by the American Hardwood Export Council, but it will establish an independent framework. One thing we do realize when you're dealing with the international marketplace, it's very important to provide information in an independent and unbiased way. That's something that the Sustainable Hardwood Coalition has been set up to do. It's supported already by 100 signatories that have signed a statement on the SHC website. If you go to that web address, you will see the statement there, which is calling specifically to support the development of new forms of sustainability verification in the hardwood sector. And the aim very specifically is to scale up verified sustainable volumes in regions where hardwood is primarily derived from smallholders, like the US, but this could be applied in other parts of the world where there's very heavy reliance on smallholders for the supply of hardwoods. The aim fundamentally is to develop a new form of certification which is risk-based, that operates at a jurisdictional level. In the United States, that would be the individual state level. In other countries, it might be at national level, or it could be at state level, or indeed at sub-state level. And what it's aiming to do is to maximize the use of new technology for sustainable forestry verification. Things like remote sensing and linking that with artificial intelligence, that can now be used much more effectively to demonstrate sustainability by looking at the actual condition of the forest and the extent to which it is under threat of deforestation. You can begin to see this sort of threat very clearly from satellite data, and these are providing much more effective ways to demonstrate negligible risk at a jurisdictional level. There's all sorts of new technologies as well for using wood chemistry analysis to identify the precise origin of forest products. And again, we think that this in time could greatly increase the efficiency and reduce the costs of chain of custody certification. So the aim of SHC is to use these sort of technologies to minimize the costs to individual forest owners and hardwood processors of sustainability verification. The big problem with existing certification systems is they're extremely expensive and actually can put wood products at a significant disadvantage because of the costs of certification. We're trying to make the whole process much more efficient. We're currently focused just in the immediate time frame. Phase one of what we're trying to achieve is very much currently focused on delivery of US hardwood that is legally sourced and deforestation-free in accordance with the EU deforestation regulation. And although this is very challenging requirement to provide the geolocation with each consignment, we think there may be ways of achieving that in the US hardwood sector using these sort of new technologies that we're talking about. But it does need a lot of time and effort to develop the new frameworks using these new technologies. One of the things that the SHC is going to be developing, and this is going to happen very quickly because the requirements for EUDR have to be implemented within only 14 months' time. We are in the process now of looking to develop a globally applicable Sustainable Hardwood Coalition chain of custody standard that may be used by manufacturers in Asia, for example, that are exporting products containing US hardwoods into the EU. You will need, in order to deliver products into the EU in future, with all the information that's required, you will need new forms of chain of custody standard, and we're working very hard to provide you with that when you're using US hardwood products. And that framework will be in place before the end of 2024. And of course, we're very keen to keep you all informed of exactly what we're doing, the timelines for that, and essentially to make sure that you begin to recognize the value of Sustainable Hardwood Coalition certification in marketing your products both in the EU and worldwide. Thank you very much.